Hello and welcome to episode 184 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan. I'm one of the co-founders here at ETR. As always, joined by the big dog himself, the master of the NFL draft props, the master of your top 150 coming soon. It is fellow co-founder Evan Silva. And Evan, the 2021 NFL draft is in the books. We now have, I think, a very clear picture of each team's roster. The fantasy season is officially in our sights. How's it going?
Going well. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a grind, though. I mean, I'm ready to get some sleep. I think after I got like 6 more teams to do. I did the AFC draft grades. I got 6 more NFC teams to write up. We got this draft tonight. After it's all done, man, I think I'm going to pop like 3 melatonins and just sleep for like 24 hours. And then, get my heart rate down to like 1 beat every 4 seconds. And, if I don't wake up, like, just know I went in peace. But if I do wake up, then I'm going to start jamming on the draft guide. May 10th is going to be our drop date for the top 150. And we're going to get some tiers out there. And I'm genuinely excited to kind of do something different than the draft, because we've been doing this this has been our life for the last like multiple weeks.
Yeah, so many draft podcasts, but it was so fun. And honestly, like, I was never into the draft, so you could bet props. Like, I'm not that into the draft, just, tell me who landed on which team after it's over. But since we got the props, it makes it so much more fun. We can actually profit on it. And I know that anybody who listened likely did really well on their draft props. So that was awesome. Okay. On today's show, we're going to go team by team through each AFC franchise, talking about fantasy implications of each team's draft, on the maybe some futures as well. And then on the next episode, we will go through the NFC. Before we get into it, I have to tell you guys about a very special offer from our friends at Underdog Fantasy. It is officially best ball season right now. And Underdog released their flagship tournament on Sunday night. $25 buy-in, $1 million to first. Just like absolutely absurd. If you use the link in the show notes and or promo code ETR after you deposit, they'll give you a free $25, new or existing user. They're only offering this through Tuesday, so check it out. Again, link is in the show notes, promo code ETR, $25 for free on top of any deposit. Okay, Evan, let's get into it with the Baltimore Ravens. Of course, they made the trade with the Kansas City Chiefs that end up netting them 2 first-round picks. They spent one of those on Rashad Bateman at 27th overall. They spent the other first-round pick on a pass rusher, Odafe Owe, at 31st overall. I mean, my big takeaway from the Ravens, just offseason and draft as a whole, is I think it's a significant upgrade for Lamar Jackson. He goes from Hollywood Brown, Willie Snead, Boykin, Duvernay to something like, Bateman, Hollywood, Sammy Watkins, Duvernay, hopefully a better performance from Mark Andrews. And so Lamar Jackson's ADP is around QB5 right now, behind Mahomes, Josh Allen, Kyler, and Dak. I think there's room for profit on that. What do you think about the Ravens draft and outlook for Lamar right now?
Yeah, the Ravens always do well in the draft, and I think they had another rock-solid draft. They banged out a bunch of needs. Rashad Bateman fills a big need at wide receiver. Odafe Owe at edge to replace Matt Judon. Ben Cleveland, their third-round pick, I think is going to compete to start right away at left guard with Bradley Bozeman or at center. So those were all big needs. They came back in the 4th round and took Tylan Wallace, who fell a little bit past where people thought that he might go, deep into the 4th round. And he was highly productive in college. And we know the issues though with the Ravens pass catchers from a fantasy standpoint. And I don't think it was the best landing spot for Rashad Bateman. Although we did talk with Corain that he thinks that the overcorrection might be the correction on Rashad Bateman to adjust for the offense might be too much. And if Rashad Bateman starts to fall, deep into the 2nd round of dynasty rookie drafts, he might end up being a steal. Corain is right that things can change. They could change coordinators. They almost changed coordinators from Greg Roman after this past year. All of a sudden, start throwing the ball, 100 more times per season. That's you can't rule that out. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I do like their draft. It was a nuts and bolts draft. They took care of a lot of issues and they got a lot of good players.
Yeah. And again, I'm optimistic on a bounce back year for Lamar for sure. I think QB5 in fantasy is very, very fair. A lot of room for profit there. By the way, Evan mentioned Kareem's rookie rankings. He's working on those now. Obviously, the ones are up right now from pre-draft. He'll have those up to for post-draft later this week. Be sure to check that out. Buffalo Bills. We didn't have to get into the Travis Etienne debate as he did not make it to them at 30th overall. They ended up taking Greg Rousseau. Shout out to us. We had Greg Rousseau to go in the first round prop, which was good. They spent their first 4 picks, Evan, on defensive line or offensive line. From a fantasy perspective, though, they didn't have a lot of needs. From a fantasy perspective, they did not add a running back. So I thought, a reasonable tick up for Zach Moss. Nothing major. What did you think of Buffalo's draft?
Yeah, there were some teams that seemingly faced like a lot of outside pressure to go draft running backs and draft running backs early. Mm-hmm. The Bills and the Dolphins, neither of them did. And that's because they know how this thing works better than, a lot of people in the media. Mm-hmm. So I applaud them for resisting that outside pressure. They, not a lot of fantasy impact here. But if you watch the Bills play last year, you knew that there was like something missing from their defense. Their offense took a huge step forward and became the foundation of the team. In all the previous seasons under Sean McDermott, the defense had been the foundation of the team. And it's because they lack pass rush. They're getting really old on the edges. Jerry Hughes is past his prime. So they doubled down with Gregory Rousseau and Boogie Basham with their first 2 picks, and they came back and doubled down. Brandon Beane is actually a Dave Gettleman disciple. He came from that Carolina front office. And one thing that Dave Gettleman has done historically, for better or worse, is to double down at positions. And the Bills did that with pass rusher, and then they did it with offensive line, Spencer Brown and Tommy Doyle in the 3rd and 5th rounds. And now they have, they're returning all 5 starters up front, and a couple of experienced reserves, and now they just injected youthful talent into their offensive line. I continue to like the way that they build. I think it'll be interesting to see if they add a veteran free agent running back here in the coming days. But Zach Moss and Devin Singletary came out of this thing, looking pretty decent in the short term.
Yeah, for sure. And by the way, still on the street is Le'Veon Bell, is Todd Gurley, is Duke Johnson, and so we'll see where they end up, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move on here. Cincinnati Bengals, big decision for them was at number 5. Do they go Jamar Chase? Do they go Penny Sewell? They decide to go Jamar Chase, and I honestly can't kill him for it. Like, I thought they should take Penny Sewell. I think Evan thought they should take Penny Sewell, but Jamar Chase's profile is just absurd from an athletic measurable, from production, like truly an elite prospect. And their offense, I think Joe Burrow is a hit. T. Higgins is a hit. Tyler Boyd is a hit. I think Jamar Chase is going to be a hit. They did come back and take offensive line in the 2nd round, but it's still going to be a concern. I'm curious what Brandon thinks about Bengals offensive line. We talked to him a little bit later this summer. Other thing I wanted to note on the Bengals is they did take Michigan running back Chris Evans in the 6th round, and they do have Samaje Perine. They do have Trayvon Williams. They do have XFL standout Jacques Patrick. But the talk from Cincinnati's front office is that they want Joe Mixon to be that every down back. And Gio Bernard now with the Bucks, Gio Bernard was playing like 20-25% of the snaps in games and a ton of passing down. So me and Leone did our first best ball draft of the season last night. The stream is up on YouTube if you guys want to watch it back. We did take Joe Mixon at 15th overall, and I honestly feel pretty good about that. Anyways, Evan, what do you think of Cincy's draft?
Yeah, I just wish they would have I wish they would have hit the offensive line harder. I think that they messed up not taking Tevin Jenkins at number 38 overall. I'm with you on, theoretically, I thought that Penny Sewell made more sense for their team, but Jamar Chase is such a badass that I'm cool with it, and I think that he's going to crush in year 1, no matter what. But I really wish that they would have. They've got the number 1 overall pick at quarterback coming off a torn ACL after getting sacked to high heaven. But in an offensive line that has been, it has been like among the worst in the league for a really long time. So, and then they passed on the opportunity to take Tevin Jenkins at 38 overall. They traded down, and they wound up settling for Jackson Carman, who played left tackle at Clemson for behind Trevor Lawrence. Wasn't very good. Has really short arms. Is coming off back surgery, and this is the guy that they had to settle for, and that was just, it was a discouraging turn of events, I think. And then they picked another offensive lineman, Deontay Smith at East Carolina. I've never seen him play, but I read about him in the Bob McGinn article. He sounds interesting, but probably like a project. So they very well may not get any impact from their offensive line picks in year one. And that's really discouraging. I love Jamar Chase, and I don't think they had a very good draft.
Yeah, no, I think that's well said. Speaking of the AFC North, the Cleveland Browns, I don't have a lot to say about this. They used a 3rd-round pick on Anthony Schwartz. I think they actually quietly do need wide receiver help. They're thin behind Odell and Jarvis. And Odell and Jarvis, I believe both of their contracts have situations where they could come to a head here in the next year. But the Browns did get your only A in the AFC in the draft grades. Why'd you end up with an A on the Browns, and what do you think about their draft?
Well, they got a bunch of good players, and they needed to upgrade their defense. They hit pass defense really hard. Greg Newsome just fell into their laps at 26. I thought that he was deserving of going as early as 16 to Arizona. They made a trade up for Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who, Lance Zierlein had as the number 8 overall player. Daniel Jeremiah had him as a top 15 player. It was surprising. He won the Butkus Award. They did not, and they didn't have to give up much to. All they had to do was drop from 89 to 113 in order to move up from 58 to 52 in a deal with I believe the Raiders. That was an excellent. It was the Raiders or no, it was Carolina. Sorry. But I thought that was an excellent move. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah can cover in the slot. He's that athletic. Josh Norris compared him to Thomas Davis. He's going to be an impact pass defender in the middle of the field, where they have gotten burnt historically in large part because they have not prioritized linebacker help. They reversed course there, and I really like it. Schwartz, I think, is like a gadget player. James Hudson, the tackle guard that they got out of Cincinnati, I think is like a player that can absolutely grow into a starter. They're starting to get a little bit old at the guard positions, or at least at left guard with Joel Bitonio. And then Ohio State defensive tackle Tommy Togiai. This guy, he's like a power player, and his athletic measurables were really good coming out. On down to Richard LeCount, the Georgia safety, was a takeaway specialist in the SEC. They got a lot of good players, and I think had the best draft in the AFC.
Yeah.
And you know what? They're catching up in terms of odds to win the AFC North. They're closing in on Baltimore. They were like plus 250 a couple weeks ago. Now they're plus 150. Ravens are at plus 120.
Yeah, I think the Browns are going to be very good. I think everybody thinks the Browns are going to be very good. Can they beat the Chiefs? I think is a question that's worth asking, but they're going to be very, very, very good. The Browns will this year. Certainly a ton of talent on paper, and Evan's only A. Evan mentioned the Josh Norris there quickly. Shout out to Josh, our great friend Josh, who had one of the best mock drafts, if not the best mock draft in the history of mock drafting. Evan came in 5th. Josh Norris came in 1st. And we only know this because Josh Norris took not a victory lap, but a victory marathon for about 24 hours with his mock draft. But congratulations to him, Evan. I know you know how hard those mock drafts are, though. That was really impressive performance by Josh. Shout out to him.
No, when I won a couple years back, I like pretty much did the same thing. But I don't know. I don't think I did it as much as Josh. I definitely took a victory lap, but it was nothing like Josh. But shout out to Josh. He's like legitimately one of the most humble dudes, and he was just excited. Yeah, he's just excited, and he's so passionate, and he works so hard. So I'm happy for him. It started to get a little annoying at the end, though.
Yeah, he had the Trey Lance going 3rd, which I think by the end a lot of people had, but not everybody. And then the other big ones, he's always has his his finger on the pulse of Carolina, and so that he had them taking J.C. Horn at 8th, which we were able to capitalize on for the plus 300 on first defensive player taken. So yeah, I was all good, and Evan had those.
Yeah,
as
but
well.
To emphasize, he had the best mock draft of all time.
Right.
So
it's crazy.
I mean, incredible.
All right, the Broncos had an interesting weekend, man. Mark Schlereth goes on Denver radio and starts talking about how the deal is done for Aaron Rodgers. And like nobody else was saying it, but it got run with a little bit. I mean, you could get some crazy numbers on Denver, 50-1 to win the AFC. I mean, crazy stuff. And the markets kind of got flooded quickly with Denver money. I don't know, man. The Packers have no incentive whatsoever to trade Aaron Rodgers. He can threaten to sit out. Maybe he will sit out for the whole year, but I mean, that's the only leverage that he has. Like Jeopardy is his leverage. I'm going to sit out and host Jeopardy for a year. That's your leverage. So I don't know. And then they pass on Justin Fields. If they're not getting Aaron Rodgers and they passed on Justin Fields, even if you don't love Justin Fields, maybe you think he's only 30 or 40% to hit. I mean, what are the chances you're going to get someone with the upside of Justin Fields again in the draft? And then less than 24 hours after they pass on Justin Fields, they trade up for a running back in Javonte Williams. So man, I'd be hard pressed not to give them a really, really bad grade, just assuming that they don't get Aaron Rodgers. I don't know, man. What a wild weekend for the Broncos. What'd you think?
Yeah, I was really conflicted writing this this draft grade in my AFC draft grades for Denver because I really like a lot of the individual players that they selected. Patrick Surtain is a stud. I really like Javonte Williams, and I think he's going to be an upgrade on Melvin Gordon. Quinn Miners, the small school guard / center. I mean, he's going to the best offensive line coach in the league, and Mike Munchak. I mean, he's like an athletic marvel. He was a dominant D3 player. Baron Browning, an every down linebacker at Ohio State. Jamar Johnson, a lot of people thought that he would go in like the top 3 rounds. They got him in the 5th. Seth Williams, wideout out of Auburn. I thought that he might go in the 3rd or 4th. Jonathan Cooper, Ohio State pass rusher. He looked like a value pick late in the 7th. I mean, they really got a lot of good individual talent, but their process was flawed because they passed on an opportunity, at a game-changing, a franchise-changing selection in Justin Fields passing on him at number 9 overall, and then trading up for a running back. So I wound up giving him, I think, like, I don't know, a C or something like that. But I like a lot of individual players, and I really don't like the process.
I mean, this roster is good enough where they might not be in a position to take a quarterback like Justin Fields again for, a long time. Like the roster is solid. So yeah, I mean, they're going to win 7, 8, 9 games, and that's going to be a problem for them if they're trying to address the quarterback position.
It feels like they just took a headfirst dive into long-term quarterback purgatory.
Yeah. And we're moving to Denver in a couple months here. My son's getting excited about being a Broncos fan. And he was like, we're watching the draft and he's like, do the Broncos have a good quarterback? I was like, not really. He's like, oh, are they going to take one in this draft? I was like, well, they didn't. He was like, why? I was like, good question. He's 6. He understands they need to take a quarterback. So anyways, we move on. We move on to a bigger disaster. Houston Texans did not have a pick until 67th overall because of the Laramie Tunsil trade, other Bill O'Brien disasters. And then due to this Deshaun Watson situation, they feel compelled to use that number 67 overall pick on Davis Mills. But this team is so goddamn bad. Like they're going to be picking 1st or 2nd next year, almost definitely. They're going to be in position. I don't know who the top quarterback prospects are. They're going to be in a position again to take the top quarterback prospect, again, essentially torching this Davis Mills pick. I did think Brevin Jordan the 5th was a steal. Nico Collins at 89, I thought was fine. But yeah, this win total, Evan was on the under when it was 4.5. And I thought it was a little thin because I was afraid Deshaun might play. Now it's down to 3.5. And I'm like, God, in a 17-game season, their median outcome they're saying is 3-14. Yeah. Anyways, what's there to say left about the Texans?
This is the lowest win total I've ever seen. And I've never seen a season with 17 games in it.
Right.
So, but dude, this team got worse. I gave him a D- only because you have to give them just a little bit of credit because Laramie Tunsil is effectively a part of this draft class. So I couldn't give them an F, but I think they got worse as a team. They lit on fire the 67th overall pick. I even kind of like Davis Mills. as as like a long shot prospect, but he has no chance of succeeding with the supporting cast that they would put him behind. If he gets on the field anytime soon, and they're going to have to draft a quarterback next year, much earlier. So they completely wasted the number 67 pick. And then they drafted Nico Collins, but they traded up for Nico Collins, and they gave up a fifth round pick this year and a fourth round pick next year to go get Nico Collins, who's, they're not going to do anything for as long as Nico Collins is on the roster, and they're giving up away future draft capital. This team is so lost. Like, the NFL needs a relegation system to get this team out of the league. They do not belong in the NFL. They are so lost and dysfunctional and terrible. They're an embarrassment. They're a black mark on the league.
Yeah, I know. And the Deshaun Watson situation is obviously making it way, way, way worse. We got reports over the weekend from Lance Zierlein, who actually, I believe, lives in Houston and covers the Texans, and also from Daniel Jeremiah, saying they don't think, many people are saying, I believe the exact quote was, many people are saying around the league that Deshaun Watson isn't going to play a snap. And that's like kind of assumed within the league. Deshaun Watson's not going to play a snap this year for the Texans or maybe for anybody else. So, Colts. They did take a defensive lineman first, which shout out to Anthony Amico. That was one of the picks that he came on with the props and said, hey, you can get plus 325 on the Colts. Take a defensive lineman first. That did hit with Kwity Paye, 21st overall out of Michigan. I was really surprised they didn't take any offensive linemen, man. It looks like they're going to try to go with Sam Tevy as their left tackle. I'm shocked they didn't take an offensive lineman at all. What do you think of the Colts draft?
Yeah, I'm a big Chris Ballard guy. I really believe in him. I think that he gets it. And I think that this was his worst draft as the Colts GM. I think Kwity Paye is a good player. He's also kind of like built strangely for a pass rusher at 6'1", 262. He wasn't that productive in college. He had 11 career sacks in 4 years at Michigan, 1 forced fumble. I think he's better than that. And I think he's going to be a good player for them, but I don't think that he is, I thought that Jalen Phillips, in terms of this year's edge rushers, was in a tier above Kwity Paye. And then I don't know if they got impact really throughout the rest of their draft. Dayo Odeyingbo is coming off a torn Achilles. He's probably going to redshirt this year. Their second round pick. They didn't have a third round pick. Kylan Granson, is going to be just another tight end for them. He's got some interesting characteristics, but I think he's going to struggle to get on the field behind Jack Doyle and Mo Alley Cox, who they gave a second round tender. And I think his role is going to expand. Mo Alley Cox, like his advanced metrics as a blocker and in terms of yards per route run were off the charts last year, and they need to get him more playing time. And then, a bunch of round 5, 6, 7 guys. I don't think that they improved here, with the exception of Kwity Paye.
Yeah, and this tackle story is going to continue to follow.
Yeah,
as they try to protect Carson
Wentz. They do
have
some options. Charles Leno just got cut by the Bears. At least he's like experienced. Ali Villanueva is still out there. The Steelers' longtime left tackle. But yeah, I gave the Colts a D for this draft.
Yeah. Okay. Staying in the AFC South, Jacksonville Jaguars. I like Travis Etienne. He's the kind of player, the kind of running back who I lean more towards as having an impact in the NFL with the Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey kind of skill set. But man, just listening to Urban Meyer, I'm a little concerned that he's going to donkey this up. He lamented not getting Kadarius Toney, who we thought was a bad pick. You can listen to Friday's podcast for that. He wants to give Tim Tebow a shot at tight end. He says, we're not going to win with talent. We're going to win with culture. And I don't know, man. I'm afraid Urban Meyer's going to kind of donkey this up, and Travis Etienne in the first round is certainly not a step in the right direction from at least what we think is a smart team building perspective. What do you think of the Jaguars draft?
Yeah, wasn't that impressed beyond the no-brainer. And Trevor Lawrence is going to cover up a lot of mistakes, I think, that this organization makes. But I was not impressed, first round running back, And then these next picks that they made, Tyson Campbell, they already have CJ Henderson, who was awesome as a rookie, and then Shaquille Griffin, who they paid, big money to sign away from Seattle. And then Walker Little is an offensive tackle behind Cam Robinson, who they franchise tagged, and Juwan Taylor, who they drafted in the 37th overall last year. It was almost like they had no regard for the talent that they inherited from the previous regime. Mm-hmm. And now I understand new regimes coming in, they want to get their guys in there, but you have to at least understand, the players that you're inheriting. And then Trent Baalke, who, if you remember, just absolutely torpedoed himself in San Francisco by drafting injured guys because he thought that the 49ers roster was so talented that they could take on a bunch of red shirts. And so, they just redshirt a guy. And then, and that completely backfired on him because these guys that enter the NFL and don't play in their first season have really, really low odds of becoming successes in the NFL. He started to do that again. He used the 65th overall pick on Andre Sisco, who tore his ACL last September, and then Walker Little, this guy that they drafted who has no shot to even get on the field in year one behind Juwan Taylor and Cam Robinson. He tore his ACL and then opted out of 2020. So, I was really unimpressed with their draft, but in the end, Trevor Lawrence is going to just elevate dudes around him, and he's going to make the offense. I think the offense is going to be good in year one, at least middle of the road. But yeah, I'm unimpressed with the way that they approach this.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, speaking of trades, Kansas City got Orlando Brown in the trade for the number 31 pick, so he's part of this class for him. They also got Creed Humphrey, the center out of Oklahoma, at 63rd. They're getting LDT back. The offensive line is really looking up. I don't know who's going to start where exactly on the offensive line, but it's definitely looking up from a talent perspective. Also, they took no wide receivers. Obviously, Sammy's gone, but they're going to go with Hardman, Pringle, Demarcus Robinson, some combo of that opposite of Tyreek Hill. So, it's very clear what Kansas City's doing. They are placing a lot of emphasis right now after what happened in the Super Bowl of protecting Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, that's a no-brainer. What do you think of Kansas City?
Yeah, I think that they could have used a receiver at some point in here, but I do kind of like the pick of Noah Gray in the 5th round to potentially be their number 2. He crushed his pro day, 4.55, 35-inch vertical, 6'8" 3-cone at 6'3", 240. I like that as an upside pick on day 3. In addition to drafting Creed Humphrey, who I think is going to start right away, potentially at center. They got Trey Smith, who a lot of people thought belonged in the 2nd or 3rd round, fell due to medical issues, but absolutely worth the risk. In the 6th round, you mentioned Orlando Brown. They really, and they're getting back Laurent Duvernay Tardif and Lucas Niang, who I think was a 3rd round pick of theirs last year from 2020 opt-outs. Yeah. So all of a sudden their offensive line, I'm not worried in the least about their offensive line, but I, and you said this before the draft, I do think that they should have maybe, jammed in a wide receiver there somewhere. Maybe they'll pick up a veteran free agent after the draft.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I thought the Chargers had a really good draft. They get Rashawn Slater, who falls in their lap at 13th overall. Offensive line is really looking up. They had Corey Linsley and Filer were adds. Now they had Slater too. And then I thought Josh Palmer at 77 is a really good landing spot for him. He lands with Justin Herbert, who's obviously 23 years old, just a mega stud. And then also you get Mike Williams, who kind of plays like Josh Palmer, wins the way that Josh Palmer wins, and his contract is up after this year. And also Josh Palmer could immediately beat out what they have right now for the number 3 spot, whether that's Tyron Johnson or whoever else, Jalen Guyton, etc. So yeah, I thought it was a good draft for them. This Trey McKitty pick, everybody's in my mentions about Donald Parham being dead. The rhetoric out of Los Angeles, at least for now, is that they needed a blocking tight end. Jared Cook is a move tight end. Donald Parham is a move tight end. They're only going to play on passing downs. Trey McKitty, they think, is going to be a blocking tight end for them. It's a lot to pay for a blocking tight end. 97th overall for Trey McKitty to play a blocking tight end is an expensive price to pay, but I hope that is how they use him. Still not the best for Donald Parham, I must admit. What do you think about the Chargers?
I I thought they did really well. Sometimes it's better to be fortunate than good. Although I do think that Tom Telesco is good at drafting. They were very fortunate that Rashawn Slater fell to them at 13, and then Asante Samuel fell to them at 47, because those guys were both projected to go earlier. They knocked out two huge needs. I mean, they cut Casey Hayward. I think Asante Samuel might end up playing outside corner for them, like his dad did. He's built like you would think of a nickel corner, but he plays like an outside corner. His dad was the same way. And then Slater, I mean, he's just going to step right in and solidify left tackle after they signed Matt Filer and Corey Lindsey. They're getting back Brian Bulaga. Boom, you got 4 good offensive linemen right there. I think that Trey McKitty is more than just a blocking tight end. But so I'm worried about Parham. These undrafted dudes, they get no respect at all. I think Josh Palmer, is going to be the eventual replacement for Mike Williams as soon as 2022, taking over as a starter.
Yeah, if you go back and listen to the podcast we did with Mike Renner, he said one of his favorite sleepers was Josh Palmer. And again, so I think it's a really good landing spot for him. Las Vegas, man, every year they keep doing this where I don't mind thinking for yourself and being contrarian, but one of the reasons that we, with our rankings, with our underdog rankings, with all our rankings sites, we regress them slightly or a little bit to ADP because you don't want to be so far out of the market that you're taking guys way earlier than you need to. And that seems like what Vegas has been doing every single year. I mean, they've been taking guys, 3, 4, 5 guys that are going around before anybody else thinks they're going to go. So whether you like them or not, you're still seems like you're paying a premium. Alex Leatherwood at 17 overall seems to fit into that category this year. They took no skill players with any of their 7 picks. Any thoughts on the Raiders?
Yeah, I have very similar thoughts about this draft. I mean, they do this. They've done this every year under John Gruden. In year 1, it was Colton Miller, and he's worked out fine. But he went way ahead of consensus at number 15 overall. Then it was Cleveland Farrell going number 4 overall. He's been a dud. Mm-hmm. And then it was Henry Ruggs and Damon Arnett last year. Both went ahead of where they projected. Ruggs wasn't a super reach, but that was, making him the number 1 receiver drafted over guys like Justin Jefferson. It looks really bad in hindsight right now. And Damon Arnett ran 4.6 coming out of college. They took him 19th overall. When the Raiders selected him at 19, the guys during the draft telecast had to rifle through their books to find him in their scouting reports. I mean, he was projected to be like a 3rd or 4th rounder. And so they really reached on him, and he had a horrible rookie season. And so this has not been working out for them. I did think that Alex Leatherwood was a good prospect. I mean, he made a ton of starts in the SEC, good athlete, really long arms. I think he's going to be fine. But you're right, they're not getting a lot of draft equity there. They wound up trading up in the 2nd round for Trevon Moehrig, who was projected to be like a fringe first rounder, but then it was revealed that he's coming off a back injury, and that scared a lot of teams. They drafted pass rusher Malcolm Kuntz out of Buffalo, really good production there. And then they used their next 2 picks on hybrid safeties. So they went and they took a safety in round 2. Of their first 5 draft picks, they took 3 safeties. So now they're acknowledging that they missed on one of their 2018 first rounders, Jonathan Abram. You remember that year they had 3 first rounders. And they wound up taking Cleveland Farrell, Jonathan Abram, and Josh Jacobs. Yeah. I mean, they blew the whole thing. And I don't think they did particularly well here either.
Yeah. It's such a mess. Well, at least they have John Gruden on a 10-year lockup, so nothing to worry about there. Miami Dolphins. So they took Jalen Waddle at number 6, and now they have Jalen Waddle, Will Fuller, Devontae Parker. That's a pretty sick 3-wide set. They also have Mike Gesicki, who's essentially an oversized wide receiver. They have Preston Williams. They have Lynn Bowden. I mean, this is just an absolutely loaded up weaponry core. Now, we had, in the draft I was talking about with Leone, we had a Tua stack where we had Parker, Fuller, Gesicki. I think we had Gesicki and Tua. And so, you can get those guys relatively cheaply. One winner, I think, from the draft was Myles Gaskin. They didn't take a running back until round 7 with Jared Dokes. And so it'll be Myles Gaskin, Malcolm Brown, and Salvan Ahmed. And, I think coaches like Malcolm Brown, but Myles Gaskin is certainly better. And Salvan Ahmed, I think they showed that they prefer Myles Gaskin by a pretty wide margin. So yeah, I think Myles Gaskin is set up pretty well this year. What do you think about what Miami did? They certainly had a lot of capital.
Yeah, every single pick that they executed here, with the exception of Jared Dokes, was geared toward passing offense or pass defense. I mean, the Dolphins, they get it. They get it. They resisted the outside pressure to draft an early round running back. They identified this draft as being top heavy and really, really thin late. And so they went hard on early round picks. Jalen Waddle, reuniting him with Tua, I think is going to add another dimension to their passing offense. And maybe a guy that will help Tua, have more confidence in throwing the ball downfield to a guy that he trusts and he knows from college with the shower narrative. Jalen Phillips, the best edge rusher in the draft, I think was an absolute steal at 18. I think that if he didn't have some medical concerns, then he might have been in play like as early as number 8 to Carolina. Javon Holland, safety/corner out of Oregon. I think he's going to see the field right away. And then Liam Eichenberg, who I thought belonged in the first round. I mean, he's been the left tackle anchor for the last 3 years, the best offensive line in college football. I know he has short arms and he's not a great athlete, but I think that he's going to be an instant starter. I mean, these Notre Dame offensive linemen have really, really good track records lately. There's a bunch of starting offensive linemen around the league that played at Notre Dame, and he was as good as any of them except for maybe Quentin Nelson in college. And I think he's going to either start at right tackle or they're going to just plug and play him at left guard next to Austin Jackson, who had a good rookie season when he was healthy. And then Hunter Long, a solid tight end to play behind Mike Gesicki. He's not dynamic, but he can block and catch. They did along the way sacrifice a 2022 third rounder to go get Eichenberg. But I think that it was worth it in this scenario because, again, they knew that this draft was real top heavy, and they wound up making 5 picks inside the top 81, and then pretty much took the rest of the draft off. And I think that that's a commendable approach based on the talent in this year's pool.
Yeah. Certainly doing things the right way in Miami. Excited for their future. Speaking of the AFC East, I mean, the team that I'm least excited about would be the New England Patriots. Obviously, the Jets are obviously in there as well. But Buffalo and Miami, to me, is certainly a cut above New England. And everybody wants to say, oh, what a genius. Bill Belichick he sits tight and his guy slides to him. You know what, man? Maybe nobody really wanted Mac Jones. San Francisco passed. Kyle Shanahan said it was never a consideration. Atlanta passed. Detroit passed. Carolina passed. Denver passed. Philly passed. Chicago passed. All these teams passed on Mac Jones. So, what a genius Bill Belichick is. And I agree Bill Belichick is a genius. I'm not saying he's a genius for sitting where he is and taking this guy who he thinks he's going to turn into the next Tom Brady at 15th overall. Nobody else wanted him. It was all media rhetoric. It was all media rhetoric that Kyle Shanahan ever even considered Mac Jones. So, I don't know, man. I'm not optimistic on Mac Jones' success here. Not even a slight on Mac Jones. It's a slight on what they have for pass catchers, for weaponry, how they're going to play the wide receiver position. So, yeah, I know I love Bill Belichick. I think he is a genius. I don't think just he should be lauded for sitting at 15 and taking Mac Jones.
All right. I mean, I think it was a pretty good situation. I mean, I think Mac Jones is a pretty decent prospect. I think he's going to be a starter in the NFL. I don't know if he's going to be like a teammate elevator, I do think he's on that Andy Dalton, Kirk Cousins plane, and not that they're even – I mean, I think Kirk Cousins is way better than Andy Dalton, but you know what I'm talking about in terms of being like a distributor and a point guard and not a playmaker. But I think he's accurate, he's smart, and I think that he's going to be their starter for a while. But yeah, they're going to continue to need to build pieces. put pieces around him, because again, I don't think he's going to elevate. He needs to be elevated by his supporting cast. They do have a good offensive line. They've got 2 stud tight ends. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, because they really are building up to play Powerball, and kind of be like contrarian in a league that has gotten light on defense and has put so much emphasis on the passing game. They picked up Christian Barmore. They traded up to go get Christian Barmore to solidify their interior defensive line rotation. They used their next pick on an edge pass rusher in Ronnie Perkins. They used their next pick on Ramondre Stevenson, who's like Bob McGinn's right up. They actually had him as a fullback, but I saw some people compare him to Eddie Lacy. He can pass block, he can catch, he can break tackles, he can play on special teams. But the entirety of their offense, of their offseason, has been dedicated to becoming a true bully ball team that wins in the trenches. And we're going to have to see how it goes, because most teams are not doing that.
Yeah. I mean, that style is so bad for fantasy too, especially when you're rotating and running back and everything like that. So yeah, it's just not great.
Yeah. By the way, I wanted to mention to win the AFC East right now, Dolphins plus 333. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, if Tua can take a step forward, man, that's very, very, very much in play for sure. And yeah, I mean, a lot of this is going to be how you weight New England. I think we both agree Buffalo's going to be very good, but if you weight New England to be worse in the market things, then Miami starts to look really good. Nobody's giving the Jets much of a chance. Speaking of the Jets, they take Zach Wilson at 2, of course, and then Elijah Moore at 34 was a really interesting pick. I think I like him. I think a lot of people like him. A lot of sharp people like him. I know you like him. He overlaps a ton with Jamison Crowder. Jamison Crowder can be cut and they can save $10 million. I don't know what they need the money for, though. They're already like $25 million under the cap, so I don't see much motivation for them to cut Jamison Crowder. Maybe I'll be wrong there, and they will. I think Elijah Moore, though, could beat out other people. Maybe he can beat out Denzel Mims for some reps on the outside or something like that. And they also have Keelan Cole on the team too, by the way. But anyways, just getting good talent. I thought Elijah Moore was a fine pick. By the way, Jets did not take a tight end. Our old friend, Evan, Chris Herndon, new regime, Zach Wilson. Maybe there's a chance here for Chris Herndon to redeem himself. I would only need to win like $1 million with Chris Herndon to get unstuck at this point, but maybe it can start happening.
Yeah, I mean, look, Adam Gase is gone,
and
we know what happens to old Adam Gase players when they get away from the death grip of Adam Gase. So, I mean, I'm here for Chris Herndon redemption. I mean, I am here for that. I think they could trade Jamison Crowder, and then they would save money under the cap. They could roll that over to next year, and maybe get a middle round pick for him. He's a good player. He just has not stayed healthy, but he's a really good slot receiver. I mean, I think that he could fit like in Carolina, reuniting with Sam Darnold. Mm-hmm. But yeah, this is a team where I like their approach. This is why I like doing draft grades, because you can kind of zoom out. Well, you're zooming in on the team, but you can zoom out on the way that they are constructing their roster, and you can sort of put yourself into the mind of Joe Douglas after he drafts Zach Wilson. And he came in on the back end of the failure of Sam Darnold. He uses his next 3 picks to help Zach Wilson. He trades up for Elijah Vera-Tucker. Joe Douglas said after the draft that he had a top 10 grade on Elijah Vera-Tucker. A lot of times people roll their eyes when GMs speak, but Elijah Vera-Tucker, like, I think he could start at right. He's going to start at left guard here, but I think he could play right tackle. I think he could even play left tackle. He's like a really, really good prospect. Now he's going to line up next to Mekhi Becton, a guy that a lot of people criticized coming into last year, had an awesome rookie season under the death grip of Adam Gase, which is never easy to do. So now they've got their bookend left tackle and left guard for Zach Wilson for the next 10 years, theoretically. They bring in Elijah Moore, which gives them flexibility to do, what they can with Jamison Crowder to continue to help improve their roster. Elijah Moore reminded me a lot of Doug Baldwin when I watched him play. He runs 4.35. I mean, I think we've seen previous Ole Miss receivers and DK Metcalf and AJ Brown come in and crush it right away. I think Elijah Moore was a very, very fine pick at 34 overall. And then Michael Carter, who is a pass catching weapon at running back. I don't think that he is a bell cow, but I do think that he could be the Jets starter, certainly over Tevin Coleman and Ty Johnson, and he's going to make an impact in the passing game. So you can kind of see the way that Joe Douglas is building, and I think that he's building this right.
Yeah, I like that. Certainly his name to watch there is Michael Carter. For sure interesting that you think he could be the starter at some point this season. Speaking of running back stepping in as the starter, Pittsburgh Steelers, of course, took Najee Harris at 24th overall. We talked about that on Friday, and working on the projections a little bit, we have Harris around 18 touches per game, which I think could be a little bit conservative, but still that's enough to have him 25th overall in our underdog rankings, RB13, just behind Joe Mixon and Nick Chubb, just ahead of Antonio Gibson and Miles Sanders. So, Najee is going to have an immediate impact in fantasy, and something we're going to have to talk about right away just on volume alone. Freiermuth they took at 55, shout out Penn State, but still think Eric Ebron is very clearly the pick there if going tight end. And I actually still think Eric Ebron is a pretty good value where he's going in drafts right now. But anyways, what'd you think of the Steelers draft?
Yeah, I just have a fundamental disagreement, I guess, with their management, that they needed like way more offensive line help than they got. They didn't take an offensive lineman until 87th overall. Kendrick Green, in the Bob McGinn article, the scouts really saw him as like a workout warrior. Apparently, according to Steelers beat writers, the Steelers envision him as Maurkice Pouncey's replacement at center. Kendrick Green started 33 games at Illinois. Only 4 of them were at center. Like the 87th overall pick in a really weak draft, relying on him to be like a day one starter is dicey. Mm-hmm. And then they took Dan Moore at number 128 out of Texas A&M. I think that they needed to draft multiple. I think they needed to use their first 3 picks on offensive linemen legitimately, and they didn't even take one until number 87. They passed on to take Freiermuth. They passed on Creed Humphrey, who's going to be the Chiefs starting center in year 1. Josh Myers out of Ohio State, Jalen Mayfield out of Michigan, and then to take the running back, they passed on Landon Dickerson, Tevin Jenkins, who's going to be the starting left tackle for the Bears, and Liam Eichenberg, who, again, we discussed when we talked about the Dolphins. I don't think they got better with this draft. And but I'm with you that Najee Harris, he should be good in fantasy. I don't think he's going to average very many yards per carry, but I think he's got a chance to catch like 50 balls and go over 200 carries for sure.
Yeah. Okay, last AFC team we're going to do here is the Tennessee Titans. One of the big stories of the draft, I thought, was no wide receiver help until the 4th round with Louisville's Dez Fitzpatrick. No tight end help, so we're going to the season with A.J. Brown competing for targets with the likes of Josh Reynolds and the Ferk Daddy, Anthony Ferkser. I mean, it's hard to envision scenarios where A.J. Brown in this offense gets 160, 170 targets, but, he could easily get 150, 8.5 targets per game. Last year, A.J. Brown on just 7.6 targets per game finished as fantasy's wide receiver 5 in points per game. Obviously just a total freak talent, total tons of efficiency. Does lose Arthur Smith, but still, you're going to have to pay a major premium to get A.J. Brown. He's going to go around the 1-2 turn, early 2nd round this year for sure. But man, this draft is only going to put more gasoline on the A.J. Brown fire. What do you think of what the Titans did?
Well, if we've got Jordan Love throwing to Devontae Adams and Taysom Hill throwing to Michael Thomas, who are we ranking at wide receiver ahead of A.J. Brown?
Tyreek Hill.
Yeah. Okay. I'll give you that. And that might be it. Okay.
Yeah.
That might be it.
We were actually grappling with this. It's hard. The Devontae Adams ranking is hard right now because you want to build in some risk. It's just hard to know how much risk to build in on that. The other guy that would be Steph Diggs. I mean, it would just be Tyreek Hill and Steph Diggs if you were afraid to take Devontae Adams.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
As for the Titans draft, I mean, and Josh Reynolds all of a sudden is looking pretty good as a double-digit round pick. Maybe he'll even slide into like the 8th or 9th round range. We'll see about that. Gosh, man, that AJ Brown, so many targets. But as for the draft, I like their draft. There's not a lot of fantasy impact other than I'm just passing on potential pass catchers. But Caleb Fairley, knocked out a huge need. Dylan Raduns, Daniel Jeremiah actually had Dylan Raduns in his final mock draft as a first-round pick. And they got him at 53 out of North Dakota State, the best team in all of FCS football. Started a ton of games, athletic, good enough arm length, and he kind of erases the disaster that was their first round pick last year, Isaiah Wilson, who just went like off the deep end. Monty Rice, they didn't pick up Rashaan Evans, 5th-year option. I think that Monty Rice eventually replaces him. And then Elijah Molden, who drew comparisons to Tyrann Mathieu and Buda Baker as like a physical safety / slot corner. Another addition to that secondary that needed it. But yeah, I mean, a pretty solid draft here.
Yep. Okay. We've said it all. We've gone through each AFC team. Be sure to check out Evan's draft grades, which are up for free on the site, Dynasty rankings, and most importantly, it is best ball season underdog. Don't forget the promo. Use the link to get in there, get free $25. Our rankings are updated with everything from the draft, a lot of alpha available, a lot of what you can do in drafts you won't be able to do later this season because the ADP is starting to get ironed out for sure. All right, we'll be back next episode for the NFC. For Evan, for producer Luke, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.